Hello, PE's Modern College of Pharmacy, Nigri. I welcome you all to short-term training program sponsored by AICTE on innovations in effective teaching, learning pedagogy, and research skill development. I welcome our honorable guest, Dr. Sanjay Boldane. He will be delivering a lecture on research data, evaluation, and interpretation. Dr. Sanjay has successfully completed MPharm in 1999, followed by PhD in 2009 from Government College of Pharmacy and postgraduate diploma in patent law and regulatory affairs. He is qualified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt professional and trainer for SIM. He is having 25 years of experience from well-esteemed organization in formulation development, having exposure in areas like NDDS, NDDS, generic product development, and worked with leading pharmaceutical companies like Microlabs, Abbott, Panacea Biotech, and Lupin. Presently, he is Associate Vice President at Micro Advanced Research Center, Bangalore in formulation development. He has completed development of 35 sterile products for regulated market and 35 solid dosage forms. He is guiding the scientists for CTD Module 3 using QBD approach with DOE development. He has worked from 2007 to 2016 with Abbott Healthcare Mumbai as Associate Director for IDDR with Global Drug Product Development Team. In his credit, there are 18 patents, 6 national, 4 international research papers. He has guided 1 PhD student and 15 MPharm students. He also presented 2 international posters at 36th annual meeting and exposition of Controlled Release Society on July 2009 in Denmark. I kindly request you, sir, to deliver a session. You are a host now.
Can you allow me screen sharing?
Sir, you are a host now.
Very good morning to all of you. Being in Pune, or maybe I'm audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. So good morning. Hope all of you are safe at your home and taking care to prevent from pandemic. So I will start my talk on how to interpret the experiment scientifically, statistically whenever we generate our data. If you see there is a based on all the knowledge and wisdom or the learning pyramid, how we start our learning, how we start our developing the knowledge and wisdom. In experiment, everything is based on the data. How we generate the data? Because once data is generated, that gives you the output. That gives you the conclusion. But what was the way you generated the data? Is it valid? Have you checked all the principles of experiment to generate the data? Because once data is generated, we forget the past, how experiment was done. And then we conclude it, irrespective of how the experiment was performed. Because experiment is a scientific, it is a statistic, both. You need a subject knowledge and you should understand the research statistic or research methodology. Then once you have the data, then you convert it to me. What is that information? Right? When we say that, okay, because I done some experiment, I increase the disintegrant, there is improvement in solubility or dissolution. This is my information. This information is not sufficient. We have to convert this information into knowledge. Can I utilize this information and develop a new product? That's a knowledge. Just merely on the basis of information, we don't have any output, any value to our experiment. It should generate some knowledge, and this knowledge actually tells us what is the know-how. This knowledge tells us that this is the correlation between input variable and output variable for which I did the experiment. And in future, because this knowledge, like when in pharmaceutics or in product development, we always talk regarding quality by design. What is quality by design? It says, do you understand your product? Just generating a data on a development and just creating a data and information is not sufficient. You need to have the knowledge, and this knowledge actually, when you use it, it is converted into wisdom. So whenever you do any experiment, or even I say when you teach a subject, I cannot teach your subject because you have gained the knowledge on teaching that subject. It may be physical pharmacy, pharmaceutics, pharmacochemistry. I may teach it, but I may not teach it at the level of knowledge or wisdom. Like that's the difference. When some lecturer, fresher joins, maybe having 5 years of experience, he may not be able to teach the topic, teach the subject on the basis the way professor can teach, because he has the research background. He has worked on the principles. He has many data with him. So he can go really on the level of wisdom. He might have resolved the many issues used on the knowledge. So when we do the experiment, it should really be converted into knowledge and wisdom. Then only that data, that outcome is useful. Just on the data and information, it's not useful. But we have to start from the data, convert it into information, then convert it into knowledge, and this knowledge should be used whenever there is really issue, resolving the problem, improvement of the product, new process. So this is the knowledge. And nowadays in every organization, knowledge management is one of the most respected domain. Whatever the knowledge you have about that product, about that process, should be managed and updated also. Because not a period of time, this knowledge should be managed, updated, and validated also. So whatever you generated, really is it applicable as of date now? Because the product has seen many changes. Product's process has seen the many changes. Some excipients, some additives, some functional, non-functional excipients might have changed. So these knowledge domains is not a static, it's a dynamic. It has many coordinates. If one is changed, there will be proportionate change in other coordinates, which should be evaluated, quantified, and updated. That this is now a new form of a knowledge for this product, for this process, for this experiment. So we have to follow this path so that whatever the experiment which you perform either at a college, in a lab, or at a scale up, you should have this path so that we will face a less problem and we can have the right best outcome. Now, many times we say, when I work in a lab with scientists, with our product development team, they plan the experiment. And when I ask, they say that, sir, trial failed. But when you have planned the experiment never fails. Why? Because do you think that experiment is planned only for success? Only the way you thought that this will be my objective? No. This is to answer some dimension of your problem. If you define the problem correctly and then move forward one by one, and experiment is not the final one. You cannot say that, okay, within one experiment, I develop the product. I cannot say that, oh, now this my product is perfect. I have done 2-3 experiments. Now there is no issue. Experiment is iterative, right? So when you plan the experiment, you have to see that it gives you knowledge. One experiment, evaluate it, again plan second experiment. Can be failed, right? But experiment cannot be either passed or failed. It always adds some feature, some outcome, some knowledge in your product or process or whatever the work you are developing. It might be new mechanism, it might be new chemical entity, right? It might be new extracts, what you are extracting from the plant. So experiment, when it is planned properly, when it's all dimensions are considered, then you always have the knowledge gain. It can, if it is a trial, most of the times scientifically we do trial rather than experiment, because when we plan the experiment, we don't consider what is the requirement of experiment, and that's why most of the time we take a more time to develop any product. If I develop a product scientifically and based on statistics, it will take a less time to come up with a best process with a stable product, because all the dimensions has been captured and whatever the data I got is really the reproducible and stable data. So we have to always remember that we have to plan the experiment, not the trial, because whatever the data we generate, it should be really valuable, and we'll see what we need to have the experiment or the research and development valuable. See, most of the time, maybe based on my 25 years of experience, most of the time we do in our industry, it's called as a trial and development, not the research and development. Some people will, some scientists will say that, oh, we don't have that much luxury to have sufficient time to conduct the experiment, but these are all our excuses. And the trial and development, sometimes it may happen within 1 or 2 trials, you may be able to develop the product, but in future, it's not good because you don't have the knowledge domain available for your product with a minimum trials. This is just by luck. You hit the target and you have, but you don't know the correlation between many parameters, many variables. So in future, if there is one variable varies, you don't know how to control your product. So it's always recommended, go by research and development. If you do the experiment, then you will really move on the path of research and development. But if you consider work only on the trial, then it will be the trial and development, not the research and development. Initially, we are in a research stage. What you do, mostly I work in a development domain, so I'm not much aware of the research. But research, we start anything, we start it with experiment. Initially, it can be trial and error, but over the period of time. But these, when we achieve something, that some target is achieved, some outcome is there, then rather than working on one factor at a time, we should move in the models. Why models? Because these models are based on experimental designs. So many designs are there based on their objective, you can use it. So the experimental designs vary what is your objective. If your objective is comparative, you can use a CRT design, completely randomized design. In a simple language, we say it as a one-way ANOVA. Screening design, suppose you want to identify which are the major factors in my experiment. When I'm developing the product, suppose I have 3-4 variables. One is a diluent, disintegrants, wetting agent. So which one is really significant? Right? All cannot be significant. If they are all significant, then we should consider accordingly also. Then interaction. Which two factors affects each other's performance? That is called as an interaction. So in first, all three objectives, comparative, screening, and interaction. Here we can call this as a descriptive analysis. Then is optimization. I have to optimize my product, which should give the best resolution at for 25% release, 50% release, and 80% release. Plus should have the assay within limit, impurity within limit. So all these optimization for all the input factors can be done by using optimization designs. We can use the response surface designs, Box-Behnken, central composite. Then is a modeling. That I have to model my product. Suppose I am working on the nanoparticles, targeting system, control list system, oral control list systems. I have 2-3 polymers. I have to model it. If I use this much percent, what will be my release profile? So this modeling also can be done. So these experimental designs are used in the model. And these models are used generating the data at the level of knowledge or wisdom, which you can use in the future, anytime for particular product. Already have the knowledge in-house. But when you work on the models, initially it is a mathematical model, right? It will be y is equal to mx plus c. But after mathematical models, when it works on first principles, it gives you the model because error term is introduced into it. After mechanistic, it starts the hybrid models, which is based on the first principle as well as the data, as well as experimental data. So if you see the pharmacy, we mostly works on this type of research. Hybrid models, combination of first principle and the data, and empirical models. So 75% if you see we work on empirical, and 25% we work on a hybrid. Mechanistic and mathematical, very few. If really you are working in a new drug discovery, and if there is a relationship between API and target, that time you can have the mechanistic model. Otherwise, most of the times we work on this model. So in a development, going from the research or the advanced stage of research, which will really achieve the objective in a quantifiable manner and scientific manner. Now these models, whatever we develop in all these hybrid, empirical, it depends what type of model it is. What is the objective? Is it linear, quadratic? And then what is the order? First order, second order, third order, and all depends on objective. What is your objective of your experiment? If your objective is to find out which is the significant factor as compared to other, or the top 3 significant factors as compared to others, then you should use the factorial design. Right? Even you can use a fractional factorial, not the full factorial also. Why to waste the resources when my objective is different, you should not use more resources. So based on this, you can achieve the state of knowledge about the system, and that knowledge we should use and maintain. It's always said, why can't I use one factor at a time? Or why can't I use just trial and develop the product? My product is stable. What's an issue? Why every time we bring a DOE, QBD in picture, right? Because the basic difference, you can develop the product by one factor at a time. I will see first, I will vary one ingredient, see the outcome. Then I will vary second ingredient, then see the outcome. By the way, also I can develop the product. I am not saying that the product developed by one factor at a time is inferior, spurious, substandard. No. But it is not optimized. If I want to improve it, or if there is some problem comes in the future, I cannot do the improvement because I don't have the knowledge about the product. I have developed the product, but I don't have the knowledge. Knowledge means what? Which are the critical factors? What is its impact on outcome, positive, negative? In which direction it goes? All these things is not available in one factor at a time. So it's always better to use a DOE or one factor at a time, because once product is there in the market, it's launched in the market. Now some problem comes. Okay. So I have to analyze the problems. I have my knowledge backup available. According to that, my problem, I will vary some other factor. My product will be again there on product to the market. So that's why the regulators, they brought this QBD into pharma. Remember, this QBD, quality by design, is not the pharma innovation. This is the statistical innovation, what we called it as a Six Sigma. So all these things we acquired from Six Sigma and coined new name, that is quality by design, right? Because Six Sigma works on the DMAC methodology, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Same thing, define means QTPP. Improve means DOE. Control means statistical process control. So all these things we brought it from statistics. Regulator forced it so that whatever the product you are developing, you should understand your product, you should understand your process, so that it is not only for regulator, it is for yourself also. Whenever you face a problem, you know how to control it. Otherwise, every batch will have the variability. Every batch will generate a OS. So to avoid it, use of DOE and QBD. These all are based on the statistical and Six Sigma approach, so that you can improve the quality of your product and process on which you are working. So the experiment, what is its objective? Its objective is to demonstrate cause-effect relationship. Which effect has which cause? This is the simple thing what we evaluate in experiment. Then why designs are required? Designs control the influence of extraneous variable. When I move in a further slides, I will explain you practically how we interpret the data and how we analyze these extraneous variables. So we purely interested having the cause-effect relationship, and experimental design, we'll see the designs also. We want to reduce the errors or the contribution other than dependent and independent variable. So in experiment, what we do, we vary some independent variable. In a simple experiment, I will tell you disintegrant and the dissolution. I want to improve the dissolution by using the disintegrant, or you can say the surfactant or wetting agent. What I will do, I will take up 3 trials: 5% disintegrant, 10% disintegrant, and 15% disintegrant, and see what is its impact on the dissolution at 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. This is simple experiment. I vary the disintegrant, which is independent variable, to study its impact on a dissolution. Dissolution is dependent variable. Right? So I want to establish the correlation between disintegrant and dissolution. This is the only objective of any experiment. So that is very in a mathematical term, it is called as y is equal to function of x. When I change the x, y will change. When I change the disintegrant, dissolution will change. So I have to vary the independent variable. All other variables, which are other variables in that experiment, whatever are other variables, it may be diluent, compaction process, humidity, compaction machine, the pressure you are exerting should keep the constant. It should be controlled. Then only I will come to know, is it really the impact of proportion of disintegrant or the concentration of disintegrant which I am adding in my formulation is giving me the dissolution, or some other factor. So this extraneous variable should be controlled. Otherwise, what happens in the same time, you change the disintegrant, sometimes your humidity change, sometimes you have reduced the hardness. You don't know which variable has again added its impact. So it's always recommended to control the extraneous variable. And then you can really conclude that what is the impact of disintegrant which I have added. Suppose 5% gives you 85 in 5 minutes, 10% gives you 90, 95, 15 also gives, then you can use it. So then this becomes your actual range, that in between 5 to 10% you should optimize. So this is my causal relationship. Causal relationship should be very clear. If it is impacted, affected, covered, then it becomes very difficult when we go for scale up. Because this factor you have not considered, neither you controlled. When you go to the shop floor, many factors gets varied because it is not in our control. You don't have any data about it, then scale up fails. This is 50% time or most of the scale up batches will face an issue. Because even when we go for a scale up, when we see the blending, when we mix API, diluent and all these things, it's called as a physical process. Actually, it is not. So till the time we consider blending as a physical process and don't evaluate properly, controlling. So if you really plan the experiment, there is no reason why we should fail. When we fail, it means you have not considered all the factors. Second, you have not controlled the factor which should be controlled. And to avoid these things, experiment should be planned so that we can conclude the causal relationship. Now, what is the condition of causality? That cause precedes the effect. Cause and effect must correlate, and no third variable should be involved. This is what. So this is one of the requirement for the experiment. When I was studying my Six Sigma course, modified it, how we should use it in our research. Any experiment is good, any data, every experiment is good, every experiment has its value, but if experiment satisfies the conditions, how it was planned. Because there are two things, two parts. Once the data is generated, only data is discussed. This experiment goes in a just cover portion. From there, we just put a data in software. Nobody discuss about the experiment and how it is designed. If experiment has these two principles satisfied, is a validity and reliability, then its data will use it in future for your process to sort out your issues, sort out your problems. First thing is internal validity. Internal, what I will discuss the causal relationship, that y is function of x. It should not y is function of x in bracket and again there is function with some other parameters. That should not be there. So it should be complete only the impact of one variable or two variable or three variable on your output. There should not be fourth variable. And this can be more optimized by using the randomization principle. Second, whatever the sample size which you are selecting, is it sufficient? We produce in future this experiment and its power is not sufficient because your sample size is not sufficient. The difference which you are trying to evaluate, for that you need a sufficient sample size that we never consider during starting the experiment. And that's why it doesn't give us a power. The power which is required in future to reproduce the experiment. 3 batches I have taken in the lab, it's okay. 2 batch okay, 1 batch is not okay. When I go to scale up and commercial batches, same thing gets repeated. 2 batches passes, 3rd fails. Because the experiment and the batch optimized doesn't have sufficient power. And then external validity, I have done in the lab. I have done it on 100 tablets, batch size 1 to 1,000, 10,000. I have to take now a batch of 20 less. In that case, whatever the sample size, sample type which you have selected, was it sufficient? And so you should do all these 3 types of validity: internal, statistical, and external. Otherwise, what happens in a small experiment, you are very successful. But when you go on a larger size, when you go to the population, then you fail because the sample which you have considered was not a representative sample of that population. When clinical trials of many drugs happens, if they don't consider the valid sample size, then when it goes actually in a phase 3 or the phase 4 post-marketing surveillance, it fails. So it should achieve the pre-validity when you plan the experiment, and then reliability. Reliability is reproducibility. Means when you take 10 times, 3 times, you are getting the sufficient precision, then it is called the reliability. So your experiment should be valid and reliable. Then it has the value to be taken in the further case. So all the research data should have the validity, internal, external, statistical, and reliable. Means it should give the reproducibility. 2 batches within specification, 3rd batch failed. It means there is something, some error is there which we have not identified. Okay. Now there is one example. In the first batch, I got the assay in between 95 to 100%. My specification is 90 to 110%. So I will say that first batch A passes. Then second B says okay, 100 and 105 it passes. So batch C has something 95 to 105. Batch D is so much variation, so it's not a right process or something happened, so it's totally haywire. So batch D, it's failed. From batch A, B, and C, which batch is good batch? Dr. Atul. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So anybody, so from batch A, B, C, which batch is good?
Sir, A is nearer to the compliance.
My specifications are between 90 to 110. Yeah, Dr. Atul.
Yes, sir. Sir, according to me, A is nearer to our results or compliant.
Okay, okay. B. Batch B is not good, doctor. Okay, so from batch A, B, C, all three are the batches which can be released in the market because they are as per specification 92, 110. As Dr. Atul said, okay, it is near to 100. This is also near to 100 higher side. This is both the sides. Because we in industry also many times we go just by range. Specification based on the range. Nowadays, agency is coming with quality metrics, but it will still take some time. This B says all the results are above 100, A is below 100, C both the sides. If I see statistically and with the considering the research, for A and B and C, results are acceptable as per specification. But A and B are as experiments not valid. They are within specification. I'm saying the results are acceptable. As per specification, I can release the batch in the market. But as an experiment, A, B, and D are failure during development. Okay, I got 98 to 110. I am very happy. I got all the result 100, 102, 103, 105. Even 110 it's also okay because it is within specification. But considering the experiment and its basics, A, B are not good experiments. We miss during development. Why we miss it? I will just go and explain you. Atul, let me know when I have to stop. Dr.
Sir,
Atul,
you have sufficient time, sir. You can continue.
till 12. I have to stop at 12 o'clock.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So you just give me the intimation around 11:55. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Or if I have 12:30, then I will continue it. You just tell me accordingly.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So A and B experiments are not valid, considering data science or the Six Sigma science or the experiment science. Right? Because most of the times nobody taught us what is experiment. So I will take you in a practical example how statistic works. Because statistic we have not considered as a good subject, compulsory subject. This is just our post-operative process, what we do. Why we study statistics is we want to draw the conclusion about a population based on the data. We have the small data. I have the 10 lakh batch size. I got 100 tablet. I have to analyze and give the conclusion or inference for whole batch. But what actually I'm doing? I take assay 98%, standard deviation 4, which we mostly go by range. Batch 2 97, standard deviation is 3. This is the sample statistic. This is not the population parameters. But my intention should be, I should move from descriptive statistic to inferential. This is the statistic, only just I am converting it, how practically it should be used. Because most of the time, statistician has taught us as a statistician with the data. I'm just explaining you with respect to our experiment. So this we do it, we are very happy, and we release the batch. And afterwards, what happens? 10 batch is okay. 11th batch, I got some problem. Could that have been prevented? In my opinion, yes. could have been prevented. How? Here we standard deviation which we never consider, which till today we say that what is standard deviation for? Okay, then what should be the rate? Sometimes I used to say 94 to 102, which is not right. So when I got this assay, this result, I will always use a standard normal distribution principle and calculate the probability to describe the population or the outcome in future for all the batches. According to us, both the batches are okay because we are just analyzing sample statistics, descriptive statistics, not inferential statistics. But when we move from descriptive to inferential, we have to use the standard normal standard deviation rule. Means 99.7% of all the values of this assay will be within a range where we say 3 into standard deviation. What is my standard deviation? 4. I will multiply it by 3. It becomes 12. It means 99.7% of all the tablets will be in the range of 98 to plus minus 12. Now you tell me, my specification is 90 to 110. In future, there will be some failure in batches, which I should have judged when I got standard deviation 4. Because we have not considered into confidence interval. Batch 2, 97, standard deviation 3, 9. Again, if I subtract 9, it will become how much? 88. It is going below the lower range of 90%. So both the batches, in future, there is always chance that some batch will fail. So proactively, we don't work and interpret our data to prevent future failures. Because here, in the data, there are 2 parts. Suppose I am getting 98% assay. So it has both the signal plus noise, or the effect plus error. Both the terms are there. Now, how much is noise and how much is error? That you should be able to identify. And that is one of the objective of the research, that how much error comes from the experiment. So experimental error, measurement, you see here, there are experimental and measurement. Measurement error is not the significant because we use SOP, we use the calibrated instrument, so it is reduced to the considerable extent. But in experimental error, one is a random error, another one is a systematic error. Systematic error is because something wrong is there. The way I explained experiment A and B, there is something wrong in that experiment. Because these errors cannot be to one side. If it is one side, it means it is systematic error. If you remember experiment 3, it was both side error, then it is random error. So random error is acceptable. Random error should be both the side. Total random error will be 0, but systematic error will be to one side. Such experiment should be always re-examine why did it happen. There might be some issue in a balance, some issue in a working standard. Maybe during weighing of the API, either less or more has been added. These systematic errors should be removed. Otherwise, you will not get the accuracy. Because systematic error decides your accuracy and random error decides your precision. So we have to control and use these principles of replication, randomization and blocking so that we can reduce the error. So systematic error, this cannot be improved just by repetition, reproduction. You have to really go into it. It cannot be analyzed by statistics. It is by subject expert. We should be able to analyze and then move. Random error, these are related to precision. By taking the replication, we can estimate it. We can control. We control the replication and the blocking we control, random error can be controlled, but systematic error, you have to go in a detail and in a data, then only it's possible. And then we can always identify the outlier in my data. Suppose if I'm doing the dissolution, solubility, weight variation, assay, impurity, is there any outlier? Is there any value outside the 2 standard deviation? So if it is outside the 2 standard deviation, it is always called as a outliers. Because unless you don't identify the outlier and normal distribution of the data, your statistic, your outcome, your interpretation would not be right. And the last batch which I have shown, yeah. Anybody want to say something?
Participants, please mute your mic.
And outliers, these are the human errors, they should be identified. Yeah. Dr. Atul, is there something?
No, sir, there is a glitch.
Sir, you please continue. Somebody has put their mic on. So we are instructing the participants. Continues.
Okay. We got this data from one batch. If you see the dissolution data of these all 3 batches, this is the data. At 10 minutes time points, we got, see the variation, 43 to 90, 33 to 96, 35 to 97. When I checked it, all the data is non-normal. Means outliers and normality, these 2 things for every continuous data should be checked. And the statistician come to me that, sir, this is failing, confidence interval is going too wide, 2 standard deviation, 3 standard deviation is also going too wide. Then I ask him, just check whether data is a normal. Then when he check the data is not normal, it's non-normal. Then if data is not normal, then you have to identify the outlier. Identify the outlier, remove the outlier. This, in a batch 3, these 2 are the outliers. How to remove it? Use the average value. Right? Now your data is normal. Now you are getting confidence interval very narrow as compared to your confidence interval here. So if we have the some observation either very high, very low, it adds error in your interpretation. And you interpret something which is not, because you have not checked the assumptions. Statistics works on assumptions. And these assumptions should be checked. When I'm saying that I'm calculating confidence interval, what is the assumption? Data should be normally distributed. It means there should not be any outliers. This we have never checked. And directly I'm coming to the conclusion of confidence interval. This should not happen. So this is a practical example how statistician treats the data and we give the wrong judgment or wrong conclusion for our experiment. Then external variable, this is other than independent, it should not be there. If it is there, it should be in a controlled way. Otherwise, it will become, and it will have the effect on dependent variable, and it will impact the y is equal to fx relationship. So it adds the error variability of noise to the data. It influences our outcome. It challenges to both internal and external validity of the experiment. And again, our time, resources, damaging research outcome and researcher reputation, everything as a stake because we don't control the extraneous variables. So once we know that, okay, humidity is going to impact the blending. Now I should perform the experiment at a controlled humidity so that it will not impact my outcome. So when you say it, right? So when you control it, then your experimental error will come down and your all the validity will go up. So experiment will have the more validity At the same time, it will have the less error and precision will also be the more. Right? So, which are the common SNS variable? Humidity in a blending. API supplier, same particle size, same API, still your blending process is impacted by API supply. Why? Because most of the properties are there in certificate of analysis and specification which are similar as compared to previous supply. But surface characteristics, particle shape, unfortunately are not the part of specification. And these both properties impacts your blending. So these are extraneous variables which we have not controlled, not considered when we change the supplier. Excipient supplier, suppose it might be lactose, but both has different surface properties, both have some different surface nature, or its hydrophilicity, hydrophobicity ratio, or the surface free energies, whatever the last solvent they have used in the recrystallization, all these things should be considered. And then is grade of excipients. If we change the excipients and grades are different, particle size distribution is different, it affects. So these are the examples of extraneous variable. Now compounding variables means two variables has the same effect, right? So you don't know which variable has how much effect, right? This I will explain with the help of experiment. You know the experiment. This is the real data from the lab. Lactose added, MCC, cross carbonyl, sodium lauryl sulfate. They did the mixture DOE. Just see the formulation variables. What they have said. There are two diluent, lactose and microcrystalline cellulose, and remaining two. One is a disintegrant, cross carbonyl sodium, and sodium lauryl sulfate is surfactant. So for A and T impacts the one parameter, and disintegrant and the surfactant impact the dissolution. Now, if you see all the results very well considered, all the experiments completed, when it comes to the table, model significant, lack of fit not significant, it looks very good as a table. But when you analyze it, this variance inflammation factor, if it is high, higher than 10 most of the times, it says that this factor has an impact from another factor. Now you say, see here, cross carbonyl sodium and sodium lauryl sulfate both impacts dissolution. And here it has shown that VIF is 926 and this is also very high. It means these two factors has compounding or adding one's effects into another. So in this case, we should select one only as a variable and other should just be added as the control variable, and another can be studied. Either you keep sodium lauryl sulfate outside, control at a 1%, and cross carbonyl sodium you can add to it. So that's why if you see here, in all these model is significant, but not a single factor itself standalone is significant. So this is very wrong experiment because the factors which they have selected during study are wrong, right? Because they should have selected either one from the diluent and one from these dissolution modifiers. Otherwise, you will get the impact from both the factors and outcome will be difficult. Then lurking. This is we have not added in experiment. We don't know why we are getting the outcome, and we just conclude with some other relationship, and conclusion in future doesn't work, right? So it was or either eliminated or held constant, but this was not included. In confounding, we have added the factors before starting the experiment. Here we don't know why ignorance, by lack of knowledge, it got added in the experiment. How to identify? If you identify the residuals or response variables, you will come to know that there is like same experiment which 4 batches I have seen. In batch and A and B, there might be some lurking variables. That's why it used the trend either one side. It might be linear or non-linear, and it will affect the response variable. The best example, suppose you have done the experiment of the control list tablet by varying the polymer 15%, 20%, 25%. But when you check that polymer, use the polymer, you have not considered the different batches, whether you have used in that batches, whether there was change in a particle size or whether molecular weight distribution was changed, because polymers don't have the definite molecular weight, it has a distribution. So these factors were not considered, and then we got a surprise when we go to the shop floor. Now I will come to the experiment and variance. Only we have to maximize the treatment variance. Signal should be more, noise should be less. Then our experiment can clearly demonstrate the outcome. Now experiment, I have explained experimental designs, all other variables than independent variables. X variable, y is equal to fx, remaining should be controlled. That is done by the experimental design, where we control all the things. Which experimental designs we should use is the replication, randomization, and local control or blocking. So these principles during experiment also it can be used, not only by modeling or experimental designs or design of experiment. During experiment we can use it so that we can have the valid conclusion. Okay, now I'll come to the last part is the factors. When we are selecting the factors, are these factors really relevant? Or some might have the confounding effect which we have studied. At the level which we have selected, is it right level, workable, approvable, cost effective? Because suppose I am adding the polymer 80%. Really, am I able to take a batch with 80% polymer? Is it possible for wet granulation? If I use 80% polymer, whether my IIT data will accept it, that this was polymer I can use in a per unit dosage form? No, all these things should be checked, because this we governed by IIT and other regulatory requirements. So if I, in my experiment in optimizing a product, suppose I use 2 parameters, I got R square, coefficient of determination 0.45. What does it indicate? That I have not added sufficient factor. I'm not able to explain all the variability. Second factor, I have added sufficient factor, I got 0.999, but R square adjusted 0.68. What does it tell it to me? The factors which we have selected are not relevant. That's why I got adjusted 0.68. So if you really use statistic to come to the valid conclusion, I think we can use the many statistical parameters to judge our data, quality of our data, because data statistic treats the data. So we can tell that, okay, this has a good 0.99, don't go by 0.99. If you adjust it is 0.68, it means your whatever the factors which you have selected are not relevant, right? Third experiment, R square 0.96, it's okay. Don't expect that you want 0.99 every time. If greater than 0.9 is okay, because this you are not using it for optimization. In a third experiment, yeah, Dr. Atul.
Sir, 5 minutes, sir.
Yeah, okay, I will conclude it. Okay. So in the third experiment, I got 0.96 adjusted 0.992. What does it tell? It tells us that the factors which I selected are sufficient also, relevant also, but now there is one more parameter which I got during modeling, that is S is 7. Suppose I am studying the impact on the dissolution. This S7 says what will be the prediction interval of my response. Suppose I am studying the dissolution. So 2 into 7 is a 14%. It means my dissolution will vary plus minus 14%. But as per my guidance and the acceptance, plus minus 10 is only allowed. It means my variables are relevant, sufficient, relevant, but variability is more. So based on this, you can work and optimize your experiment so that it will be useful. Only I will show you the last example and then I will end it. Okay. So this is again a real-time example, which in our lab only. Scientists selected methocell and max steroid, and response is a dissolution. They have done all the data generated, dissolution done, dissolution 0.5 hours, 2 hours, 6 hours. In a model, when we checked it, two excipients selected. Methocell, this is a polymer, HPMC polymer, which has to control the release profile, and max steroid is a lubricant because it is hydrophobic in nature. So scientists thought that we can add it. But when model generated, your only max steroid is significant factor, model is significant, max steroid is significant. It means if I interpret this example, max steroid controls the release profile, not the HPMC. So as an expert, you should know, can it happen? Sometimes you should not go only by the what your data or statistician says. When I determine and gone in the depth of this experiment, the level of HPMC use was 53%, 59% and 65%. If we remember the science of matrix tablet and oral control release, after 20-25%, there is no change in release profile. And all these values have been selected when the release profile is a constant. Even when you see the data also, you will get most of the release profile in a similar. There is no significant difference in between the data also. So when you select the level of your excipient in asymptote, where already the plateau has been reached, your outcome of experiment will not be the significant. So only statistical knowledge is not sufficient. We have to use the subject knowledge to develop the solution. And don't depend every time on the software, because in a research, there are these many steps: design the experiment, perform the experiment, treatment of the data, analysis, interpretation, conclusion. Only these two steps are performed by software or by the statistician. That's why it's always preferred. We should know some statistics. Just Minitab design expert means you are not expert in statistics or DOE. It has all other elements also. So if we consider all the elements stepwise and if you go ahead, probably it will be the good outcome. And when we study the DOE, just see where statistician has a role and where scientist has a role. Experimental design, this is first step. Subject expertise with statistician is required. To perform the experiment, subject expert is required. Treatment of the data, statistician can treat or you can treat, because nowadays softwares are available. Analysis, statistician can analysis. If you have some expertise, you can analyze. But interpretation and conclusion, subject expert only has to do it. And that's the reason that why we study the statistic in research methodology. So I will stop here. There are some more slides also. Maybe next time we'll discuss it. And thanks for your invite, Dr. Pathak and Principal Dr. Chaudhary. With this, I will end my talk, and if there are any questions, let me know.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an informative session. If any participants want to ask question, kindly DM in chat box. Or if anybody wants to ask question, they can raise hands. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Now I
Okay,
will
thanks.
write few points of the sessions. We studied about the QBDs, DOE, R&D models like mathematic, mechanistic, hybrid, and empirical models. Experimental designs like comparative screening, interaction, optimization, and modeling. OFAC versus DOE, which is a statistical equation acquired by Six Sigma. Then outliers, what is meant by outliers, and experimental and variance and factors affecting DOE. I would like to thank Sir for sharing his knowledge, ideas, and your valuable time with us. Now I kindly request Sir to accept a virtual bouquet and certificate on behalf of our principal, Dr. P.D. Chowdhury Sir, and STTP coordinator, Dr. Phatak Sir, and team. I take this opportunity to thank Sir and all participants for attending and cooperating with us.